Good morning, everybody. So yesterday I spoke about, my three pillars. I spoke about the fact that my prayer was based on mental, spiritual, and physical growth. And this week I'm going to go through with everything spiritual. And where I left off with you all was me coming into the Orishas. So the last thing that I told you all was I was in spiritual conflict with myself because I'm black and I'm practicing a colonized religion. So, one of the things that had really hit me was I was very deeply influenced by the teachings of Louis Farrakhan, like a lot of the speeches, not necessarily the teachings, but the speeches, because he was basically speaking about black empowerment. Uh, I did for a moment consider going Muslim, but being Muslim, it would not have fit with who I am as a person, honestly. Now, from a standpoint of me saying that my ancestors are Fulani, the Fulanis were black Muslims from, Senegal all the way across to Nigeria and different parts of North Africa, so Morocco and going all the way over to East Africa. So that would have been something that I probably would have done, but the gender roles and the way that they assess gender, it just didn't fit me. So I began to look more deeply into, African traditions. And what I began to understand was when you remove colonization from African people, and you look at the root of any African practice, regardless if it's coming from Ifa, which is coming from the Yoruba people, or if it's anything like Akan or whatever practice across Africa, even starting in ancient Kemet, ancient Kush, and Abyssinia, these were spiritual practices that utilized everything. They saw God in everything. So when I start to analyze how my people saw God in everything, and there was a relationship between the individual and the earth, and that is what made the practice, the spiritual practice, or the religious orientation was based around nature and God, and an understanding that they must all work together, and that there is no such thing as it's always going to be good and then you have some bad, but that they both kind of work together. And I realized that in my life that made more sense to me than being in a church. And when I say that, I'm going to get into this right now. The black church, as I grew up, I saw it as a place of refuge, right? When I stopped seeing it as a place of refuge, it was actually as I became more of an educated person. And when I say educated, it wasn't that I was a child and I wasn't smart or brilliant, but I didn't understand that the church being a nonprofit organization, and anytime something is a nonprofit, there is freedom of speech. You do have the First Amendment to have freedom of speech. The problem is when you take federal tax exemptions in a spiritual place, you remove freedom of speech. A lot of people don't realize that. So if you were to go to any black area right now, which I would dare say is not a black area because it's pretty much either you have your colonizers, which I would say the white people who have basically created policies and laws, redlining to stick you in that community, and there is no social upward mobility, there's no growth, there's no fixing of your streets, you have a whole lot of issues going on. That's one oppressor. The second oppressor, in my opinion, would be foreign people who are able to leave wherever they came from, move into where you are, not even move there, but set up businesses there. And they're able to extract money out of that community because the white policymaker had already stripped you really of the ability to create capital, move capital through your community, and be a sustainable adult, a sustainable human being. But now you've brought in other people under the American dream who will come in and exploit your people too. The third exploiter would be the black church, in my opinion, because they take in revenue from the community, and that money cannot be expelled back into that community. In most cases, those pastors or those people who are in power with those churches are sustaining that money within the coffers of that organization and really sustaining their own bank accounts. And this was something that I began to learn really around the time I went off to college because I was given a scholarship. And me coming from a household where my grandmother was financially illiterate, the church provided a scholarship to me because I was going to Morehouse, right? And Morehouse is extremely expensive. Not like USC expensive, but expensive, especially for black people who don't have this or that or whatever. So my scholarship got screwed up by the church. Now, keep in mind, at the time, I had put all of my faith into this church, into this preacher, into all of this stuff right here. I can say that now without shame because that's literally what we were indoctrinated into. We were indoctrinated into a thinking. We were indoctrinated into the belief that the pastor is the spiritual teacher and God has blessed this teacher and you must follow this teacher wherever this person goes, right? Well, the issue becomes for me is that I almost got kicked out of college because my pastor had called the woman, right, who had given me the scholarship a bitch. Sure did. And she left the church with her money. Now, I get two conflicting stories because the church says they didn't get the money. The woman says she gave the church the money. Either way it goes, I didn't get money and I almost could not finish college. My faith in the institution was unbelievably shaken at this point because I'm sitting here like, do you not see that I'm trying to better myself? Do you not see that I'm trying to do more for myself? Do you not see that? And in this, I go back to the original prayer that I told you all that I said when I was 16, is that I wanted strong mental, spiritual, and physical growth. This was God showing me that I'm going to show you what you must step away from so you can step into something better. And oh my God, did I see it. Because not only did I find that out, God just started revealing stuff to me. So I then find out that at the church, right, and I'm not going to say the church's name because I think that that's messy, but what happens is that this particular pastor, they count the giving at the church. They throw big annual giving things, like, you know, that they give these dinners, these banquets to the people who give the most in tithes. Now, the thing is, if your church is a church that is supposed to help the downtrodden and the unfortunate rise to some level of, you know, self-autonomy and self-determination, why are you not helping the least of these? That became what I had to think about. And a fraternity brother, an elder statesman, fraternity brother at that time, was the person who really showed me this. And I really appreciate my frat brother for doing this. He showed me all of it. I saw where the nepotism within the church was what it was, which is why I'm not a religious person to this day. Even as I approach the Orishas, I'm not looking to go and find a godmother or godfather to do that. I'd rather let the spirit use me like it uses me because it's been doing a good job without any interference. You know what I'm saying? Just straight up spirit, but I digress. I begin to see that church was an asylum because I kept getting messages from God. Now, here's the thing. I noticed that in my church, a lot of people were dying. They were unhealthy, right? So that whole prayer about mental, spiritual, physical health was kicking in. Health-wise, I was around a lot of people with diabetes. I was around a lot of people with cancer. I was around a lot of people who, from a health standpoint, were not taking good care of themselves. Right? And for me, I've seen enough relatives drop dead of diabetes. I've seen enough relatives drop dead of chronic diseases that could have been avoided. So now my intellect and my knowledge is starting to play with me that is this a place that's edifying me and supports the kind of life that I'll live? And honestly speaking, it was not. So I felt like I was starting to be uprooted out of this place. It was like strike one, strike two, strike three, right? Mentally, I've now checked out from this place. Spiritually, the pastor's words are now starting to become hollow to me. And I've already kind of gone through this different direction in my life of seeing that, okay, I no longer believe in the church. I have not lost faith in God, but I have lost faith in the institution. As I became more educated, I began to see that this 501c3 organization that has to be hush hush, which means that it can't be really in the community doing the work that it has to do, has now halted what it could do to help me. And then I started to see other families at the church, because when I was in church, and I think still to this day, there are a lot of people who loved me in the church, and, I was in the choir and I sang and everything like that. And, they loved me. And I could see it from that standpoint that, these people had so much faith in our church, but they did not have faith in self or ability. And so now all of a sudden the institution is crumbling. And then I eventually leave the church. And then I start my spiritual path. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'll come back to you all later. Peace.